Thanks again for tuning in to the 15th episode of the MMA Podcast. I'm just as surprised as you are that we made it this far. We finally had a UFC fight this past weekend. UFC 152. John Jones tested harder than he's been his entire career. Absolute stunning performance. We also have quite a bit of news to bring to you as well. Was that Chael Sonnen I just saw in an Always Sunny promo? Kenny Florian considering coming back from retirement. The 153 trailer release, 154 poster release. Sounds like Bisping's going to fight the winner of Weidman and Boach to fight Anderson Silva after he takes on Stephan Bonnar. But this intro is about to end, so I got to pass it back off to Smoke Serpent.
We did it, mama. We did it. We did it for the love of the game. We did it, mama. We did it. I did it for. Yes, yeah. We did it, mama. We did it. This game will never be the same. We did it, mama. We did it. I did it for.
And huge thanks to Smoke Serpent. If you haven't listened to our 8th episode with Eddie Bravo, go ahead and do that. One of my favorite episodes we've done so far. But, man, now we're on our 15th episode. Who knows how far along we'll be in a year or 2 years, who knows. But, it's really all thanks to the people who listen. Obviously, if we had 0 listeners, there wouldn't be any reason to keep on doing this, but I feel like it grows a little bit every single week. We actually have had a few people tweeting at us saying that they're going to call in this week and join in on the conversation. Definitely looking forward to that. So really, most of all, huge thanks to our listeners, but we got to give Smoke Serpent a little bit of credit for giving us that awesome intro. Shout out to our partner, MMA Mental, Ray and Patrick, a.k.a. P-Money, do an amazing job over there. They actually just had Steven Quattros on and Tyson Nam on. I'm definitely going to check that out. I think it got posted on iTunes just a few hours ago, actually. They also have a Wednesday podcast. It's not a live podcast, so you can go on there at any time. They post up a new episode every Wednesday. And just like every week, we really encourage you guys to get involved, be a part of the podcast. We have people call in every now and then, tweet us every now and then. So if you'd like to call in yourself and talk to us about whatever you want, even if we're talking about one thing and you want to switch it back to another thing, we're cool with that. You can call us at 646-378-1046. You can tweet us at the MMA Podcast, and obviously visit us at themmapodcast.com. And definitely tell a friend if you enjoy us. You have a buddy who likes MMA. Let them know, this podcast, the MMA Podcast, and that would be appreciated more than you could understand. I'm ranting, but before I end my rant I give out at the beginning of every episode, I just want to remind you guys to listen to us every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I believe that's 2 a.m. for our friends in the UK. And we actually started a new show this week called the MMA Roundtable. We had the first episode this past Monday, so definitely check that out. And that'll be every Monday with our friends Ray and P Money, every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I guess that makes it midnight UK, and 4 p.m. Pacific. And I'm about out of breath from talking so much. And we actually had a little bit of mic difficulties. Probably one of the most hectic few minutes before podcast. Chris's mic died. Just a few minutes before we went live, and we improvised, and Chris actually just picked up the phone and called us up. So he's doing it old school style. You may wonder, you might be coming through with a little bit less quality, but nonetheless, he's here in spirit, which is all that matters. What's up, man?
I'm doing this all for you, you guys. I'm doing it for you. I'm holding up this phone to my ears to break down MMA for our countless fans out there, so I hope you guys...
Countless.
Yeah,
probably
you
around...
can't count them.
If I were to estimate, it'd be about 4, but you can't count them.
You can't. It's incredible, but I'm doing good. That was hectic. I apologize to everyone out there. The headset itself still works. I can hear sound, but the actual microphone itself is not registering sound anymore. So it's time to, I guess, upgrade or something. Cause
Damn, what kind of headset is it? We can talk trash about different companies like we love to do.
It's a $30 Logitech headset that I got from Target. So I mean, it had basically, I think this one lasted 7 or 8 months. The one before that about the same. So definitely don't invest in a $30 headset.
You know, I was actually thinking about it. I actually have a $30 Logitech headset that I bought about 7 or 8 months. It's cutting out. Oh God, that's not a very good joke. No, but I'm doing well. Yeah, that was pretty funny. We're literally 5 minutes from going live. Chris is restarting his shit. We're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I'm actually prepping myself. Like, all right, I guess I can fly solo this time. Maybe we'll just do an hour. I don't know if I can talk straight on for 2 hours. But then you're like, yo, why don't I just call in? Like, oh yeah. Which you can call in and sound just like Chris does. Our number one more time is 646-378-1046. I gotta turn on my radio voice.
Yeah.
Which sounds a lot more like just a creeper voice.
Yeah, just a straight up behind the dumpster creeper. Whatever.
We're not going to take it to where we took it last podcast. For everyone who listened to episode 14, we took you into some murky waters. For everybody who didn't listen to episode 14, please don't listen to episode 14 unless you're prepared to be very much offended. But, yeah, you have any stories about poop or...
Oh, you want a poop story, huh? Nah, I don't have any poop stories. Today was actually a very traditional, boring day. I got nothing.
Yeah, I had a pretty boring day, too. I'm interning, and this is awesome pod, and I didn't have it. What'd you do? Nothing. What about you? Nothing. This is amazing pod, but yeah, I'm interning somewhere, and for some reason I didn't have anything to do today, but touch myself and look at in front of all the other employees. It was glorious. But yeah, I guess if we don't have any stories about poop or making fun of
midgets or retards,
we should swiftly move ahead to UFC 152. What did you think of the card, man? Even if this card was an absolute stinker, I would have loved it because we didn't have 6 weeks. Or we did have 6 weeks since the last UFC event, or really any MMA of note. There was no Bellator, no Strikeforce. You did have a couple promotions. There actually was a spectacular knockout I saw by this little Asian guy with pink shorts. Just blasted a dude. I wish I remembered his name so I wouldn't sound like a bigot.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Little Asian guy, pink shorts, blasting.
No, but it's maybe the best head kick knockout I've ever seen. You know what? I'll actually post that on the MMA Podcast.com later tonight, so you can head there and check it out. But yeah, what did you think of UFC 152, man?
I was thoroughly impressed, man. It was very, very exciting card. I mean, you had that Swanson-Oliveira fight. The only fight that you're just like, come on, was the Jole Hamel one. But, it was nice to see the Hammer get a win. And then the top 3 cards were just fantastic, back and forth. And they all just offered some intriguing, on paper they were supposed to be good. And then they actually executed it, and it looked great. We saw a new champion crowned and another champ just get even stronger. And, it was some great moments, and especially considering how long we went without anything substantial. It was just awesome to watch it again. I even posted on Facebook, I can't believe I'm watching the UFC right now. This is eerie.
Yeah, it definitely was. But, we're definitely going to get to that flyweight championship after we break down a few fights. But before we get into breaking down those fights, what do you think of the people, for those who weren't aware, which I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast if you don't follow MMA, but Demetrius Johnson and Joseph Benavidez fought for the flyweight championship. Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson won that, was an underdog, and actually won the fight. What do you say to those who weren't impressed and said that, it was a snoozer between the 125-pounders?
What do I say? I say, well, then you're just not a fanatic, because you can find basically any redeeming qualities in any fight except for, maybe Starnes Quarry and Sylvia versus Monson. But most fights out there, even if they're not the greatest, I can still pull some things away, like, oh, look, Sam Stout worked on his wrestling, or, oh, look at this guy, he's added this arsenal to his tricks. So I enjoyed it, man. It was definitely more action than you're going to see in, like, any 3-round heavyweight fight. So I say to those people, poo-poo on you.
Poo-poo on you. It all comes back to poop.
It does. It always does.
No, yeah, there were a lot of people who were criticizing the 125-pounders, saying, oh, yeah, of course it's going to go a full 25 minutes. These little guys can't knock each other out. But you know what? Those little guys can submit the shit out of each other. I think the highest submission rate is in those lower weight classes. And, God, the speed, both punching speed and the speed they move around the ring is a display. I mean, it is really something else. They're circling each other, throwing in punches. I think, once we have these lower weights for a few years, the 125, 35, and 45-pounders, we're eventually going to see UFC records set and punches thrown, punches landed, because, these dudes have wars. You think back to Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida, which back when Guida was standing in the pocket and banging instead of running away from each other, that was probably, up until that point, the greatest display. Maybe that and Griffin Bonner, of dudes just standing in the pocket, throwing punches at each other, and they were the lightest guys. So I think as we see more fights, the rosters in those divisions are pretty limited still because they're relatively new divisions. But once we see those rosters fill out, we'll start seeing some slugfests. But enough about us going gaga over tiny dudes, because both of us have a thing for tiny dudes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why you talk to me. I mean, you're not a small guy, and I'm tiny, so look at that. And then most of my friends are smaller than me. Look at that.
And, like you're usually a bear, but in our relationship, I'm the bear and you're the twink.
Yeah, but I'm definitely a power bottom and you're a weak top, but that's neither here nor there.
I wouldn't say I'm a weak top. I would say I'm a power top. I would say a power bottom and a power top can always,
neutralize each other. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, this is fantastic.
Speaking of a power bottom and a power top, we had Vinny Magalhaes versus Igor Pekrajic. It was probably the head scratcher game plan of the entire card. Igor Pekrajic maybe a little bit better standing up, probably definitely better standing up, but when it goes down to the ground, I don't think that there was a question that Vinny Magalhaes was the better fighter. He won gold in the 2011 Abu Dhabi Championships, gold in the 2007 World Jiu-Jitsu Championships. He actually got 2 bronzes at the 09 Abu Dhabis in the absolute and the 99 kilo. Just a stud at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Pekrajic is a guy who's lost a couple submission victories. I think he was knee barred by Kaladov back a few years ago. But no one is really sure why Pekrajic kept going for the takedown, trying to take Vinny down to where he excelled, but he did. And a minute 14 into round 2, he got armbarred. Do you have any idea why Pekrajic would try and bring it to the ground?
Sure, absolutely. Pride. That was just a pride move, man. He just, for some reason, he had something in his head that, it makes no sense. Pekrajic is primarily a striker, and he took it into his enemy's specialty. So he took his greatest strength, and he just basically dumped it aside and jumped right into his opponent's greatest strength. So, that was just a boneheaded move. Who knows? Maybe that was some kind of weird game plan that those Eastern Europeans were coming up with. I can't be too sure.
Yep, I think Pekrajic trains at a Croatian top team with Krokop and the like. So maybe he's been training his jits. Definitely not a slouch grappling. He has 8 submission victories, only 2 submission losses. But I don't know. Pride's great, and if you're fighting a guy who's a little better at the ground game, for sure, go for it. Be fucking as prideful as you want to be. But you're fighting one of the greatest grapplers in the UFC. There's pride and there's stupidity, and I don't want to call the guy stupid.
Just call him stupid, man. We've already made fun of Hamill. I talked shit about Hominick when he was off. Yeah, just call it like it is, bud.
That was a stupid game plan. That was so stupid. Yeah, I'm usually a guy who will say, "Oh yeah, well he isn't stupid, but this isn't." That was a stupid game plan. He might be a genius. I don't know. I've never heard him speak. Don't know anything about him. But that game plan was straight up stupid. And yeah, we had Magalhães win that round 2, a minute 14 in by armbar. And we actually were talking a little bit on the round table. I think Magalhães should get James Te-Huna next. What do you think?
Well, seeing as how we broke this down on the round table, I think that's a really solid test considering Magalhães is on a considerable win streak, even though against lesser opposition, and Te-Huna has been an absolute animal since losing to Gustafsson. He's just really turned it around the corner. I think it'd be a great step up for each. I had mentioned Little Nog on the round table, but Ray came up with a good point that may just be a little too big of a step up. I mean, Little Nog wouldn't have much to gain, and it would be all for Magalhães for him to gain, so probably wouldn't be the right matchup. I think Te-Huna is perfect.
But then again, you have Stephan Bonnar fighting Anderson Silva, so you really don't know how much of a mismatch you'll get in your next Magalhães fight. Bonnar wouldn't have been on the top 20 light heavyweights who we would want to see Anderson Silva matched up against, so that's definitely a head scratcher. Even though it's good stylistically, which we'll obviously get into in a minute, definitely a head scratcher as far as where both fighter is in their career. But that's pretty cut and dry. Pekrajic, or actually the one thing I guess we should broach before we move on to the Swanson Charlos Oliveira fight, as I like to call him. Pekrajic, after the fight, came out and criticized Magalhães, saying, this wasn't a grappling fight, this is the UFC, we don't want to see people grapple, which is obviously extremely hypocritical, because Pekrajic was bringing it to the ground. It wasn't Magalhães trying to pull guard and go for a takedown. It was Pekrajic going for takedowns, so didn't really know what that was about, but he ended up coming out and apologizing for it later and saying, everyone's just looking for excuses after they lose. I don't have an excuse, so it sounds like he finally got into line, and I'm extremely interested in seeing where Magalhães really lies as far as the 205-pounders, because he might just be a gatekeeper. Obviously beating Pekrajic, he proved he has a future in the promotion, but I don't know. Is he top 20? Is he top 10? Could he be top 5? I mean, I doubt he'll be top 5 unless he exponentially, works on his striking. But geez, he really could be dangerous, and if he gets through a guy like Te-Huna, we'll probably see him fight a Little Nog or a Phil Davis or a Forrest Griffin or a Gustafsson. Who knows?
It's really exciting to see a guy with those kind of skills that he could end it. If he had latched on to John Jones, I honestly think it would have been a very different story. And in the light heavyweight division, there's really not a lot of depth now, considering that Rampage is on the verge of retiring. Gustafsson is fighting Shogun. Shogun already got beat down by Jones. So opponents for Jones, there aren't really many outside of Dan Henderson, Gustafsson, and Glover Teixeira. So it's just nice to get a little added depth, especially when it's someone that is a consummate martial artist and just a world-class grappler.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy thinking Jones didn't get the belt until last year. I think it was March 2011 when he beat Shogun and originally won the belt, but he has already beat the who's who of the 205-pound division. Bonner, Vera, Matyushenko, Bader, Hua, Jackson, Machida, Evans, Belfort. I mean, he has a really impressive list. I mean, like literally in just 1 year of having the belt, his list of victories rivals guys like Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre, and dude's only 25 years old. He was born in 1987. That's insane. I mean, probably the number one storyline in the sport now is how long is John Jones going to continue this reign over the sport?
Right. It's said he beat the who's who and he's rivaling Silva. If he has 2 more wins, and think if it was against like Gustafsson, Dan Henderson, and Gustafsson, if he beat those guys, not only would he break Tito Ortiz's five title defenses, but look at the list of people that he did. He would be the greatest light heavyweight of all time at that point, and that's only 2 fights away. And he said on the last countdown that his goal when he set out on this venture was to become the greatest light heavyweight champ. And he's 2 fights away, man. Hats off to him. We're the same age,
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. He in my opinion has the most impressive 4-fight win streak of all time in the entire sport. Within a year, within 13 months, he fought 4 times and didn't just beat these guys, he convincingly beat Shogun, Rampage, Lyoto Machida, and Rashad Evans. Literally the who's who of the light heavyweight division, maybe even the who's who of the UFC. I remember when the UFC 2011 video game was released, and the demo had 4 superstars: Shogun, Rampage, Lyoto, and Rashad. And Jones burned through them all in 13 months. The only one that went to a decision was the Rashad fight, and that wasn't even close. He choked Lyoto unconscious. He rear naked choked Quentin Jackson. He embarrassed Shogun, which, even if Shogun would have really won convincingly at UFC on Fox, I don't know if Dana White would have given him a title shot that quick, because he was not defeated by John Jones. He was demolished by John Jones at UFC 128.
He landed 1 punch in that fight, one that I can recall that was a clear shot in 3 rounds, and he tapped out after he was pummeled against that cage. Only guy to ever stop Shogun, except for that loss to Coleman, but that was by injury. Only guy to ever stop him, and Shogun never looks bad against anyone. I mean, against Henderson and Vera, he was, obviously getting lit up, but it didn't ever look like he was really going to quit, and John Jones was the only man in history to make Shogun quit. That's a scary dude.
Yeah, Griffin tapped him out, but that was a really shocking fight, and obviously he came back in the rematch to knock Forrest out in a single round. But, he's one of my favorite fighters. Every single fight he's in is an absolute war, except for the John Jones fight. He did not threaten John Jones at all. Vitor threatened John Jones the most he's been threatened in his entire career, and we'll definitely get to that at the end of our breakdown. But next up, we had a featherweight fight at 145 pounds. We had Cub Swanson and Charles Oliveira.
Don't you mean
Charlos? Hey, man, it's Charlos. Can I get a little reefer, man?
Swing by for just a quick sack, dude.
Come on, I just want a quick sack, man. 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the first round, knocked him out. It was a very odd knockout, though. One of the more strange knockouts I've ever seen. You actually called it fishy. We were watching the fight and commentating back and forth on Skype. Cub ran in, landed a brutal, one of the most, you'll obviously see devastating spinning liver kicks from guys like Dennis Seaver, but as far as just a single body punch, that body punch that Cub Swanson landed was devastating right in the liver. Followed it up with a brutal right cross to the dome, and Cub landed the left-right combo, jumped back, and Oliveira took one step back, took two steps back, and crumpled toward the ground. It didn't look like his legs gave out like you normally see when a guy is straight knocked out, but it's almost like, not to say he is a weak fighter. We talked about this a little bit on the Roundtable show, but it almost looked like he was willingly falling. He just gave up and submitted defeat. You actually said it was a little bit fishy.
I did, and you know what? It did look fishy. I mean, when you're watching it live, you're in the moment. So I was like, man, that looked like he took a dive, or maybe he just gave up. And you were kind of calling me out, like, what was fishy about it, man? He got hit hard, and I think both things are absolutely correct. It did look weird, but at the same time, he got cracked to the liver and managed to stay on his feet, and then got hit directly on the temple by a shot that I watched in slow motion. Cub, when he was throwing that right hook or right cross, whatever it was, he actually threw it and then lifted his back leg off of it. So he really wung that thing. And when you get hit in the temple, man, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You get hit in the temple, and it just could have devastating effects for anyone. So, Oliveira just needs to work on his defense ultimately, and Cub, with his third finish by KO, is a man to be reckoned with at this point. He's always been a great fighter, but failed against stiff competition, and he's really taken the turn. I'm guessing he's just dedicating his life to it more than he ever did, and he's getting the right direction. So we're going to see probably some great things from Cub, hopefully a number one contender fight at some point.
I'll show you some stiff competition. He has 3 TKOs in a row by punches, I couldn't agree with you more. He only has 5 losses on his career. The first one was his first fight, so you can't really put that against him. But the other 4 all were to the cream of the crop of people his size. He lost by a guillotine in 2007 to a Jens Pulver, who was in his prime. He lost to Aldo, who is the current featherweight champion, and Mendez and Ricardo Lamas in 2010 and 2011, respectively, who are both still at the top of the division. So Cub definitely belongs there at the top. And Charles, kind of the same sort of dude. This loss against Cub was his first loss at featherweight. The other 2 people he's lost to are Jim Miller and Donald Cerrone, who in their own right are really elite lightweights. But I still think Charles is a top 10 featherweight. But Cub pretty unequivocally proved that he was better than Charles Oliveira.
I have a quick little about Cub Swanson, actually.
Shoot.
The time I ever brought up a MMA news website, it was on MMA Weekly in 2007 when they fought, and the top headline was Pulver subs Cub, and it had a picture of a guillotine. I'm like, wait, Jens Pulver subbed a bear cub? What's going on?
And we actually have a caller. Sorry you were on hold for a little while. Who do we have on the air with us?
My name is Christian Grow.
Oh,
guy, let's kick him off. Kick him off. This is actually this is a friend of the show, Christian Grow. How are you doing, buddy?
This is Jake Walters.
No, it's not Jake Walters.
Oh fuck. All right.
But did you watch UFC 152, my friend?
No, actually I didn't. But I was on YouTube the other day, and I was looking up videos from John Bones Jones. I think that was his name.
Yeah.
That would be his name indeed.
Well, I just had a question. How do you guys feel about him? Because I saw one of his matches that he elbowed this guy into submission, took his face off, and he actually got disqualified. Is that his only loss? Do you guys know much about him?
It is. We both know a little bit about him. I know he trains UFC, but yeah, I mean, most MMA fans think of him as an undefeated fighter. Actually, we'll get back to Swanson Oliveira in 1 second, but to get back to John Jones, he has a single loss to Matt Hamill. And he lost it by 12 to 6 elbows, which it's actually a pretty preposterous rule. The only reason a 12 to 6 elbow, which is just like it sounds, it's an elbow going from the top to the bottom. Jones was still really green in the sport. I think at that point had only been fighting 3 years maybe, and was a little bit. He was not completely familiar with the rules, and wasn't familiar that a top-to-bottom strike was actually a illegal strike, and one of the strikes cut open Hamill really bad. The ref should have warned him after the first one, but let Jones land a few of these top-to-bottom elbows, cut Hamill open, and Jones was actually disqualified because the cut... Hamill said during the fight that the cut was the reason he couldn't go on. He didn't let people know he actually had a dislocated shoulder, which was probably the main reason why he couldn't carry on. But Jones landed these devastating 12 to 6 elbows, was disqualified. Obviously Jones was dominating Hamill, and it was kind of a bullshit rule.
That's a dumb rule, man. The whole reason that was ever put in place is when they were forming a unified rule set for mixed martial arts. The commission that was heading this thing to get this set in place watched videos of like kung fu martial artists breaking ice blocks with those elbows, and like, that's just too dangerous.
And those dudes who rip apart phone books, it was the same sort of thing. We're elbowing down on these blocks of ice and breaking them, and they were like, oh, well, we can't have this. And it's a rule that should be changed, but these fighting commissions in various states are so incredibly archaic that we probably won't see it get changed in the near future.
Well, Joe Rogan said on his podcast, Christian, that John Jones it looks scary for a reason, and he brought up the Hamill fight. He said that Matt Hamill, when he pushes someone up against the cage, he looks strong, and he's a bully, and he's pushing for it, whereas John Jones looks like a bug, like an ant that just takes this big piece of weight and just tosses it, because he's got tons of trips and throws on his record, and he ragdolled Matt Hamill, and nobody ragdolls Matt Hamill. Nobody.
Yeah, Jones is so incredible because he was in the UFC within, I think, a year and 3 months after his professional first fight. He goes 6-0, kills everyone in the first or second round, KOs. I think he had one submission in there. Then gets brought into the UFC at UFC 87. He has not looked back since. I haven't seen a guy progress as much as John Jones has in such a short amount of time, and that's one thing. And even with that, all right, maybe if he progresses an incredible amount, I don't know if he's technically as good as a few other guys in the 205-pound division, but he has such a freakish reach. Guy's only 6'4", but he has a 7-foot half-inch reach. He has
they were talking about that.
Yeah, they have more reach, or he has more reach than anyone in UFC history, including the 7-foot-tall Stefan Struve, and it gives him a huge advantage in two different ways. A, no one can get inside his reach, so he can just jab the shit out of you and land these crazy spinning elbows and these front kicks and these leg kicks that no one really can keep up with. And on the other side, like Chris was saying, he looks like an ant tossing around logs. He has so much leverage in his long arms and long legs, it doesn't take as much effort as it takes a Dan Henderson or a Chael Sonnen or a Rashad Evans. I added in Rashad Evans to make it a non-racial thing.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Gotta make it a non-racial thing. But, he is an absolute freak.
So, Christian, I know you're not a huge MMA fan, correct? Not too into it. to put it in terms that you understand, you're in the military. He's only been in the sport.
How do you know that? You're psychic.
Yeah. I was just guessing. I was putting that out there. I could tell by his cadence that he was in the military. So, basically, he's been in the UFC for 4 years. That would be, and he's the champ now. That'd be like you going into the military as a private first class, and then 4 years later you're a general, like a 4-star general.
Yeah. All right, that does put into perspective.
It does. It certainly does.
Well, I definitely have to thank you guys. Long-time listener of the show, first-time caller.
Thank you.
Information you've given me has been very helpful, actually. And, well, so sad, but I'm going to have to get off the line right now and go back to training my battle rooster. But I'll definitely call again later.
Right.
Train him hard. Make him strong.
All right. Good. So take care. Enjoy your tea.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
And if you would also like to call in, you can give us a ring. We're at 646-378-1046. It's really fun talking about Jones. As homoerotic as it sounds, I could talk about John Jones all day. Those dreamy eyes and those wonderful pecs. I would eat pasta off of those pecs.
Stop it.
I would cut lamb's meat on those pecs. Sorry. Back to Swanson versus Oliveira. Lamb's meat. I don't know why I went with lamb's meat.
I thought you said lamb meat. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Meat I get, but lamb's meat, I don't get it.
It's the best kind of meat. But, talking about Swanson's future opponents, the featherweight division, Swanson's definitely a top, probably a top 5 guy at his division in the UFC. Seaver, unfortunately, is tied up in a match against the highly, who's going to be highly rated as an underdog.
Hot dude, real hot.
Dude, he's so hot. Eddie Yeagan, I think most people think Seaver's going to take that. You have a few other people at the division, though, who would be pretty interesting. Cub has fought Lamas and Mendez before. Those are his 2 most recent losses. You have Chan Sung Jung, who would be an interesting fight. There's a few different names I would see him matched up against.
Yeah, I think that Dennis Seaver is highly overrated. I think that the guy has looked really good against C-level, and he's beat a couple B-level guys, but he's always fallen in his A-level competitions. I mean, he may have been undersized for most of his career, but that was his choice. He could have gone to the WEC. I know that's dumb. He'd make less money and less exposure. But as far as where he stands, I think beating Diego Nunez in a very close fight doesn't really warrant him any kind of top contendership. I think that he needs to work his way up, personally, considering that he lost by domination to Cerrone before he made the drop. I know that he beat Matt Wyman, but that was also a close fight. So I think he's kind of ruled out. Zombie, I think Korean Zombie would be a great fight, considering how we talked about this on the roundtable. He's already fought Chad Mendez, and he's already fought Ricardo Lamas, who are at the top of the division. So Korean Zombie has a similar win streak. He's actually won more by submission than by finishes, but I think that would be the ideal matchup for Mr. Swanson at this point.
Definitely, and we will see him moving forward who Swanson will get matched up against. My only thing with a Seaver, I feel like Yeagan is a drop-down an opponent from Diego the Gun
Definitely.
Nunez. Nothing against Yeagan, the Filipino phenom, but yeah, he's coming off a win against Mark Hominick, but it was a split decision that I actually disagreed with. It's kind of a head scratcher when you see a guy get a drop an opponent after beating a better opponent. So, maybe they're just trying to protect Seaver until he can get into that number 1 contendership fight. Eric Koch's also a possibility coming back from that injury. He was going to fight Jose Aldo, but Dana White's hinting that Aldo's fight will still be against Frankie Edgar, coming off of that injury to Aldo. But yeah, we will see what happens with Cub and Charlos in the next few months, who they end up getting matched up against. Matt Hamill defeats Roger Holay. You have any comments on this?
Don't.
Yeah, just like we said last week, they were pretty much gifting Hamill with a much a opponent who had much less experience, was at a much lesser caliber. So yeah, unanimous decision. Matt Hamill had his way with Roger Holay, and that's all we have to say about that. It was probably the snoozer of the main card. Not probably, definitely. And yeah, we'll just move right along. We had had our top three fights. Bisping versus Stan is a good enough fight to a co-main just about any card. It originally was supposed to co-main 152, but Jones Belfort was put in as the main event, so this got bumped down to the third spot. This actually was a really great fight. That first round was a barn burner.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. I thought that it was a interesting fight. There was one big punch by Brian Stan, a couple of takedowns by Michael Bisping, and other than that, it didn't really, there weren't any submission attempts. There weren't really many scrambles. It was Michael Bisping firing off, combinations, Brian Stan winging a punch, and then a couple takedowns. There weren't a lot of scrambles. I wasn't really a huge fan of this matchup. The fight itself, matchup has been great. I kind of disagree with you on that one. I really didn't like it, and Michael Bisping impressed with his wrestling. And other than that, I just didn't care too much for this fight.
Most fights that I have problems with are those Ben Askren, John Fitch type lay and pray fights. This was standing pretty much the entirety of the fight. And once again, Bisping proved that he is all around an amazing fighter. If it wasn't for that huge shot by Stan at the end of the first round, I actually would have given this a 30-27 Bisping. I actually scored the first round a draw, the second two rounds toward Michael Bisping, which it really was a head scratcher this afternoon when I read that Dana White apparently told Brian Stan that he thought he won that fight.
What?
Yeah, and Stan says he also believes he won that fight. So Dana White and Brian Stan apparently live in an alternate universe called Zorthax, because there is absolutely no way Brian Stan won. I mean, yeah, he landed an amazing shot at the end of the first round, like you mentioned, but I really don't see either of the second rounds being debatable. Depending how much you give a giant punch, I really could see you scoring at 10-9 if you think, all right, well, Bisping did dominate a majority of that. 10-9 Stan if you think, man, that shot was by far the most damage anyone took in the entire round. I got to give it to Stan just for that, or 10-10 like I did. Seeing both points, but man, I really don't see how you could have Brian Stan winning that fight.
Going back to your Zorthax thing.
Welcome to Zorthax.
First thing that popped into my head is Dana White on a floating throne with a bejeweled crown and just yells, "Bring me the spear!" And Brian Stan just comes in hovering on his knees with a pillow with a spear on it. I don't know why that popped into my head, but to me, that was Zorthax.
Yeah, I'm quoting Brian Stan here. I just pulled up the quote. I'm disappointed, obviously. Dana came back after the fight and told me he thought I won. Of course I'm going to be biased. I was in there and I thought I won. I have to take an analytical view. I knew it was going to be close, but I thought I won the fight.
Brian Stan, beyond that shot, took a lot more damage to the face and got taken down, 2 or 3 times. That loses you a fight under the unified rules. It's not like Brian Stan was fighting off of his back and threatening with submissions or pressuring. It was Michael Bisping landing cleaner shots and taking him down.
Definitely, and he's one of these guys. Even though we've seen him fight, I think this was his 8th or 9th fight in the UFC. We still don't really know where he stands. Is he a top 10? Is he a top 20? He's definitely a gatekeeper or better. But, I mean, other than that first round finish against Chris Lieben, he does not have a single impressive victory. You know, his wins have come against guys like Sakara, Santiago, Masinzio, Cantwell, Rodney Wallace, who, yeah, I guess are all decent, but he's also lost, like, every time he gets put up there against an elite fighter, whether it's even a guy like so Stinky, as you love calling him, Phil Davis, which was before he moved down to a middleweight, obviously, but his only 2 tests at middleweight have been Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping, and he lost, I think, pretty convincingly to both guys. He was, submitted by Sonnen, and pretty
Lieben,
much.
Man. You can't forget about Chris Lieben. He's always a stiff test, man, and he blasted Lieben out. So you got to give him a little credit. He did have an excellent performance against Lieben for sure.
Definitely. But yeah, other than that, I don't really so yeah, he really dominated Lieben. I think he would beat Lieben 9 out of 10 times. But he's somewhere floating between top 5 and top 20, and we really haven't been able to nail him down yet, because Sonnen and Bisping now, I would say, are both top 5 guys in the middleweight division. But
haven't been able to nail Brian Stan yet, but we'll see with this next performance. We'll be able to nail him for sure.
I would love to nail Brian Stan after his next performance. But yeah, and moving awkwardly on. This is great pod. Michael, there's a real stacking up of a lot of contenders at the middleweight division. You have Weidman, obviously, who's fighting Tim Boetsch at the end of the year at UFC 155. You have Belfort, who's probably going to come back down to middleweight after this fight against John Jones. You have Belcher, who's fighting Okami at the same card as Weidman. You have guys like Hector Lombard, Michael Bisping, obviously, Rich Franklin, Mark Munoz. He definitely lost pretty hard to Weidman, but I'd still say he's top 10, top 15 at least in the UFC. So, yeah.
One more thing, dude, before you move on. Francis Carmont. Don't forget about that guy. I think he's a dark horse, man. Trains at GSP. Are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm Francis Carmont.
Yeah, okay. There we go. You got super silent. Francis Carmont has 3 very impressive wins so far, and he hasn't gone up against a top-tier guy, but he hasn't really even looked in trouble yet, and he is just a freak of nature with his explosiveness. His technique is beautiful, so I think Francis Carmont is the new Chris Weidman. I know that's ridiculous to say, but at one point Weidman was fighting nobodies and dominating, and look at him now after his career. So I think Carmont is probably 2 wins away from being a real super top contender.
Carmont did beat Magnus Sindenblad at UFC on Fuel 2.
Oh, did
not forget about Magnus Sindenblad. Yeah, he's on an 8-fight win streak, including the 3 since he's been brought into the UFC. Just beat Carlos Vemola, who's fighting Chris Lieben in his comeback fight. Yeah, he actually takes on friend of the show, Tom Lawler, November 17th at UFC 154. So Lawler will definitely be the toughest test he's gotten yet, and we know Lawler's been training jiu-jitsu with his cat, Mr. Waffles, as he so lovingly let us know. God, that was a very tough interview. If you say one thing that's a little off, like he said something, super weird, and I was like, wow, that sounds like the weirdest thing in the world. He's like, no, it's not the weirdest thing in the world. There's lots more weird things in the world. Like, all right.
It was hard in the same boat as Mark Hominick, where after everything he said, he would pause and be like, right? And he'd have to agree with him. Yes, Mark. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was kind of funny, too, because he was nothing but nice to me, but once you fucked up a Great Lake, he was on you like a pack of rabid dogs. He did not let up.
I think he could smell the beta on me, dude. He could just smell that beta, and his chimpanzee genetics took over. Just
I haven't heard anyone bully somebody that hard since high school.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was great to have that happen on the podcast for all of our millions of, our countless listeners.
Billions. No, yeah, that was a whole lot of fun. I'm an asshole for waking up his wife and kid. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you know we're talking about. Go fuck yourself. Yeah, Bisping. I don't know whether he deserves a Weidman next. He probably will get Chris Weidman next. I think he'll outmatch Tim Boetsch at the end of the year. And Bisping actually came out the last week and said he was cool with fighting a guy like Weidman. Chris is messaging me. What? Go fuck myself. No, I'm saying anyone who hasn't heard that episode. Go fuck.
Oh, I got you.
If you haven't heard that episode of the podcast, go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. I got it.
But instead of going and fucking yourself, you should actually just go and listen to it and maybe tell a friend about our hilarious MMA podcast that you like enough to have sat through 52 minutes of this horse shit already.
Come on, give yourself more credit, man. A lot of people like it.
Yeah. I have no idea why, but no. I think we're putting out a semi decent program. You know, we're still pretty much at infancy, but I'm at least from my perspective, I'm having a fucking ball doing it.
Same here, man. Couldn't think of a better way to spend my early evening Wednesdays. Yeah.
I could not either, my friend. Great pod. Yeah, personally, I think he's 2 wins away. I think he should fight Jake Shields next. And Silva probably isn't going to have another fight at middleweight for a little while. So in my perfect world, we see Bisping fight Jake Shields. We see Weidman fight Boetsch and Belcher fight Okami, as is planned. The winner of the Weidman-Boetsch fight fights the winner of the Belcher-Okami fight, and the winner of that fight fights the winner of the Shields-Bisping fight. It's like a little bracket going on in my head, a 6-man bracket, and I think that would be a perfect test. And the winner of that, let Silva go and fight Bonner, then let him fight Jones, then give an interim belt to the winner of that little 6-man tourney I just described, and then let Silva come back down and take the belt from him like GSP is going to do Carlos Condit.
I liked all of it except for Shields getting that shot, because, he had yet another dog shit performance against Ed Herman. I wanted to shoot my eyes out and then, have rabid raccoons fuck the gaping holes that are left in my skull after that fight. I did not want to watch that fight, and I think Jake Shields, as good as he is, somehow just falls into this role of having boring fights in the UFC. Martin Kampman was horrible, and then the GSP fight was pretty bad. That goes both ways. And the Akiyama fight was only good because Akiyama was actually using, judo. And all he does is just bully for a takedown, man. I've never been a Jake Shields fan, and I don't think he deserves a fight with Bisping. I'd say give him some other middleweight out there, but that's kind of hard to do considering he just beat Stan. Munoz is coming off of a loss, so I guess that's the only one that makes sense.
Yeah. Bisping before the Stan fight was coming off of a loss, which I think definitely needs to equate into something. And Jake Shields is coming off 2 impressive victories. He, those were really boring fights against Yoshihiro Akiyama and Ed Herman, but he dominated the shit out of both dudes.
Take that away from him. I guess I just put a little too much emotion into it. You're right. You got to separate it. What you liked about the fight and what actually equates into how they move up the ladder. That's pretty accurate.
All right. Well, what about this? Silva goes and does his thing at 205, and they do an 8-man. And Joe Silva, if you're listening to this, break out a pen and a piece of paper. An 8-man tournament for an interim middleweight fight. In 2 quarterfinals, you have what are already matched up. You have Weidman-Boetsch. You have Belcher-Okami. The winner of those fights face each other. And on the other side, you have Shields-Bisping, and you have Lombard versus Paul Harris. and the winners of those fights fight each other. The semifinals go on, finals. I think that would be an incredible way to draw a little bit more fans in. But kind of like we saw with Strikeforce, injuries are so fickle, especially with the UFC recently. You have no idea if someone's going to pull something, or they tried doing a flyweight bracket, and you saw the clusterfuck that ended up going on there with the rematch and all that. It ended up taking them almost a year to sort it all out. But if they were to do a tournament style thing in the UFC, I think middleweights would make the most sense.
That's wonderful, man. That's a great breakdown. I was also thinking Pajares, but then I thought, well, he's coming off an injury, and then he lost before that. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have top skills. I mean, the guy's an absolute monster, so I think that's beautiful. I was actually going to say Andrew Craig should fight. Who is Pajares fighting again? Sorry,
Hector Lombard.
I was thinking Andrew Craig, because Craig is coming off of 2 impressive wins. He beat Noak and then knocked out if I can't think of his name, that's not too good. So I guess don't listen to me. But he knocked out
Rafael Natal.
I can't remember his name, but he's a jiu-jitsu guy and was coming off of a win.
Rafael Nadal, who's a tennis player.
That's his actual name? That's it? You weren't making that up?
No, the guy's name is Rafael Natal with a T.
I got it. Yeah, no, Craig has some awesome skills. That's what I was thinking. But I'd much rather see Pajares versus Lombard, considering, aren't they going to fight? Isn't that an actual matchup?
They're fighting each other on December 14th. I believe that's UFC on FX6, and I actually think that fight's going to be headlining the entire card. So I guess maybe throw in Craig and Munoz as alternates. How about that?
Perfect. Yeah, follow the Strikeforce heavyweight tournament rule of thumb, which is you have alternates.
And I mean, shit, an alternate came in and won the goddamn tournament.
Yeah, that proves, man, that MMA is so volatile and, just kind of an enigma that anyone can win on any given day unless, someone's name is Anderson Silva, then he's guaranteed to win.
And a quick note on the word goddamn. A lot of people are like, don't curse my Lord. It's not cursing God. It's saying God damn this. So moving on, people say, "Oh, don't say damn to God." It's like, Chris, if I were to curse at you, I wouldn't say, "Chris, damn." I'd say, "God damn it, Chris."
There you go. That's a very accurate point. Jake Walters lives at such and such an address, and you can find him. I will post that on my blog.
My Social Security number is 741552214.
All right, I think you made that up, but moving on.
I definitely made that up. I would not be giving up my Social Security number to 1 billion people or however many fucking people. 4, I forget, somewhere in there. But moving swiftly on, people have heard us talk enough stupid shit in the last 5 minutes. We had a couple of championship matches as well. We had the flyweight championship, light heavyweight championship. One thing I'm a little worried about with MMA in the future, the reason boxing isn't that popular is because belts really don't mean anything. I mean, literally, I think Manny Pacquiao is the holder of 6 belts, or like 13 belts, six different divisions. It's something stupid because boxing has gotten so completely out of hand. They not only have something like, between 15 and 20 weight classes, but you have 5 different, sanctioning bodies. So I think I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but he has a stupid amount. Yeah, I'm looking now. He has through his career 7, 11. Yeah, he has 16 belts in his career, which is really stupid. I think somewhere between 5 and 10 is all right. I really hope the belts the UFC gives out never hits double digits or higher, which really would only give it the room to go one more. Maybe a cruiserweight, 235-pound division. I always go on random rants when I think about the flyweight division.
Random rats.
Random rats. But yeah, this is the UFC's 8th belt. They just a few years ago had 5. They expanded it out to 2 lower divisions, 135 pounds and 145 pounds. And this was the first 125-pound championship. White said in the future it's more likely for us to actually see a women's belt rather than a new weight class, whether that new weight class would be a super heavyweight or a cruiserweight or a paperweight at 115. But yeah, the first 125-pound championship, and we saw an upset. We saw, Joseph Benavidez. I don't know why I stuttered on his name there. Joseph Benavidez, a.k.a. Joby-One Kenobi, was heavily favored. Even before this flyweight championship they drew up, they were saying that they were literally creating this division just for Benavidez. And his first title shot at it, Demetrius Johnson, heavy underdog, won a split decision, which I'm glad he won, even though I was rooting for Benavidez, because I had the card actually 49-46 toward Mighty Mouse. But yeah, 48-47, 47-48, 49-46 for the Mighty Mouse. And like we said before, we actually broke down the whole card. A lot of people were complaining, these guys are too little. But, God, they have some insane movement in the cage.
Absolutely. To kind of start off, Demetrius Johnson, I always, I kind of liked him. When I first saw him fight, he lost to Brad Pickett in a very fun fight. And he came over to the UFC, and he had some dominating wins against Kid Yamamoto, and then he lost that fight to Miguel Torres, or he won it, but I thought that he lost it, man. I really, really thought that he lost that fight. I thought that Miguel was much more active, and, it was one of those things where it was just Demetrius taking Miguel down, but wasn't doing anything with it, and Miguel was threatening with submissions. So then cut to this flyweight, championship, after Demetrius lost to the champion at 135, Dominic Cruz, and I was looking forward to it. And then he wins a fight against Ian McCall. We've gone over this actually on the podcast. I think it was episode 1 or 2, and it was just frustrating for me, man, because not only did he, in my opinion, lose that fight, but there was a point where Ian McCall looked at the ref and then looked at Demetrius, and he's like, "Oh, you poked me in the eye." And then Demetrius, went to, touch him affectionately or put his hands up like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then as soon as Ian McCall, relaxed, Demetrius started lighting him up with punches, man. I understand that unless the ref stops it, keep your guard up. But that was just a douchebag move. I really didn't like that at all. So then cut to, he beats Ian McCall in dominating fashion. And this fight was actually just, it kind of sold me on Demetrius again. He just had a perfect game plan, dude. It was flawless. He was slipping away from all of Joseph's power punches. They got into some great scrambles. I thought it was a fun fight, man. I mean, they were just going back and forth, and even though Joseph wasn't very effective, he was trying to win, man, and it was a split decision win. So anyone out there who thinks that this fight was just, boring or anything like that, man, just poo-poo on you. I enjoyed it. And
poo-poo on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to face the winner of, who is it? It's, help me out here. Brain's failing me. Little black dude.
John Dodson.
Yeah, Dodson versus Mayorga, or whatever the hell that guy's name is. So I think Demetrius will have his hands full with the winner of that fight for sure.
Has that been made official? I actually didn't hear that.
No, I just assumed because there's nobody at 125 that they have in the UFC. Obviously, it's a very shallow division, so that's just my guess. Because John is a big name coming off of The Ultimate Fighter and having some impressive wins, I would have to assume that they would make that fight.
Yeah, and luckily we're going to see that card in a week and 2 days. We're going to see John Dodson, the Ultimate Fighter champion, taking on Jussier Formiga, a.k.a. Jussier da Silva, known as both. I'm not really sure how that works. Yeah.
Orga. I just keep it simple.
Mayorga works. The only round that I gave to Benavidez was the fourth round, and that was the only round he really was able to flex his wrestling. I mean, Johnson, even though he had a couple of takedowns, he couldn't keep Joby down, and was really effective at standing up once it got back up on the feet. Had excellent footwork, and a super young guy, only 26 years old. Won really convincingly, and I definitely agree. I think Dodson versus De Silva would be a good test next, and I think because really the 125-pound division is so thin now, I would love to see Benavidez and McCall fight each other, and the winner get another crack at Mighty Mouse.
I think that's a much better choice, actually. I mean, personally, you've got guys that were in the tournament, and it makes sense to kind of maybe build up Dotson a little bit more at 125, considering in the UFC, as far as fans know him, he has fought at bantamweight as opposed to flyweight. So I think that's a good call. You can maybe give him another one or two fights while you're hashing out the number one contender fight between McCall and Benavidez. And I want to see that fight, man. Those guys bring it every time. McCall is just, really good with his Muay Thai, and he's got some solid wrestling, and Benavidez is just, obviously, he's a phenom at that weight class, so co-signed.
I actually want to see the winner of Benavidez fight, or the winner of McCall-Benavidez fight Johnson, but I think Johnson should fight someone else first. It makes a little more sense, especially because this De Silva-Dodson fight's coming up so soon. It almost takes away the whole purpose of a tournament if you feed a guy who we just beat in the tournament, throw him right back toward Johnson. Both guys, their last fight was against Mighty Mouse, so I think they fight each other, let Johnson defend his belt once, whether it's against the winner of Dodson versus De Silva, whether it's against Chris Carrizo. He's a 125-pounder I really don't hear people talking about as much as they should. There's a lot of really good talent outside of the UFC. Maybe they sign a guy like Joshua Sampo, who just beat Antonio Benuelos in Legacy Promotions. We will definitely see. I think we'll eventually see Bibiano Fernandez both come down to flyweight and eventually coming to the UFC. So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Great points. There's also a guy named Edwin Figueroa. I don't know if you've heard of that fella, but I would have to imagine he was undersized for bantamweight, so I would hope that he would actually go down in weight and fight at flyweight, because he looked tiny against guys like Alex Caceres and he's fought some other guys. Michael McDonald, who's really tall for the weight class, so I think that's another guy. He's coming off of a 2-fight win streak against Alex Caceres. It was by a decision, but he also TKO'd Jason Reinhart before that. So there's another up and comer who could probably make the weight.
Yeah, and Luis Gaudino, John Morega, who's probably the guy you were thinking of when you were talking about De Silva, both coming off victories against Lineker and Yusilis Gomez. Honestly, enough, like Bisbing would say, enough talking about these little twats.
My 11-year-old daughter could mop the floor with these cunts.
And, we had an amazing main event. Vitor Belfort was by far an underdog, by far the biggest underdog on the entire card. It would have been an upset of historical proportions, probably the biggest upset in the UFC history, even more than Sarah St. Pierre. And he almost pulled it off within a minute of the first round. Belfort had this crazy armbar going, literally hanging off John Jones, his feet tied around his shoulder blades, hanging upside down, yanking on Jones's elbow as hard as he could. Said he heard a pop. Unfortunately, said he let off a little bit when he heard the pop. Jones Jones really won me back as a fan. I was not really happy with the whole UFC 151 fiasco. He turns down a fight, gets the whole card canceled. I was, hating on Jones with the rest of the MMA world, and then he puts on one of the most resilient performances I've seen in my life. Watching that, I was looking for an injury after that armbar. I was like, oh man, I think Vitor may have hurt him. And after he escaped, the way he was landing that left against Vitor Belfort, or that right, rather, his right arm, the way he was just landing those crazy punches, it's like, all right, this guy's arm is definitely not damaged. And after the armbar attempt, it was completely one-sided. Jones would take him down, almost finished him in every round, was devastating him so bad. Vitor, I think you said, looked like a fish at the post-fight press conference. Just absolutely destroyed him. And then when the fight's over, he's like, yeah, I broke my arm. It turns out he might have nerve damage. What a performance put on. 4th title defense for Bones Jones. Broken Bones Jones. You still there?
Yeah. Hell yeah, I'm here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you look back at when it was initially announced. Like, I looked at it and I was like, dude, am I like hallucinating right now? Vitor, a guy who hasn't fought at this weight, he's big for middleweight, but man, he really hasn't fought and had a good career at 205. That's very impressive that that they would come up with a guy like that. And then, after all the news, Shogun turned it down, Machida. I was like, okay, well, Vitor's got some balls, and he's not a small guy. So it was just nice to see him come in there and put on an actual performance where he could have won, man. That was really, really early in the first round. And like you said, that armbar was just intense, dude. When I saw him hanging, I was like, oh, kind of like when you see something that's about to fall. You're like, oh.
I've heard that sound come from you before.
Okay.
In sex.
Yes.
During sex.
During gay sex. So essentially what that fight was just incredible. And Vitor, to me, looked the biggest he's ever looked. Like, if you go back and look at him when he was a 23, 24-year-old heavyweight, he was like 220, 230 pounds. Vitor looked fucking massive in this fight. I thought he was going to look tiny because he lost a lot of weight for middleweight, but apparently he's had some kind of strength and conditioning thing going on. He looked fucking huge, and second and third rounds it was where I was like, okay, Vitor's fishing for that armbar again. You could hear Joe Rogan saying, oh, he's looking for it, and I was really excited. I'm like, man, if he can just get him with that again on the same arm, who knows? But as it turns out, John Jones has added some new tricks to his arsenal. He had that leg side kick. He did it to the leg, did it to the ribs, and actually rocked Vitor at the end of the third round. Rocked him with that, and Vitor actually tried to play it off but fell down. Jones rushed in, and to see Jones go in there in the 4th round, take him down, get to side control, crucifix elbows, move off. As soon as he moved off, I'm like, okay, maybe he's going to go to mount, and then he went right to that Americana. He just put his knee on Belfort's arm, held his down, and just cranked it and got the
yank. 54 seconds in the 4th round, cranked out that Americana, and it seems like Jones has almost preferred the submission over the knockout of recent. I mean, in his last 6 fights. He has that TKO over Shogun, which you almost can call a submission, because if you watch the video, as Hua is falling to his knees, he actually taps to strikes. But
that
I
was
think
rape. That was rape.
That was absolute rape. But before that, he submitted Bader by guillotine, and after that, we saw him give Quentin Jackson a rear naked choke, Lyoto Machida that standing guillotine where he literally choked him unconscious, in that decision against Rashad Evans where he kind of played it safe, but luckily he's back into just those brutal submissions, Americana. It was dirt style, and we'll probably do we'll probably see Vitor move back to middleweight. Who knows who he'll take on there. Or shit, he looked great at 205. Why not stay in and fight a guy like, Shogun or Rampage or Rashad? We might end up seeing Rashad.
Dude, a little Nog Belfort fight.
Oof.
How'd you feel about that?
I think Belfort will win that just from the jiu-jitsu he showed. Nice burp there for the pod. He showed against John Jones. That would be amazing. But Jones, this is something I mentioned on the breakdown. There's what I think is going to happen and what should happen. What should happen is Jones should fight Dan Henderson next, because Henderson's only going to age. White's hinted that Henderson's going to fight Lyoto Machida next. I really want to see Henderson get that shot against John Jones. Will he still, he's 42, but, by the time he's 43, 44, 45, you never know when that age is really going to kick in. So he should fight Henderson next. What do I think is going to happen? Dana White has been pointing toward a Jones-Sonnen fight very hard. He even said during the post-fight press conference, if fans want to see Sonnen versus Jones, then I guess I got to give them Sonnen versus Jones. Like, Dana, where were you when all the fans were asking you to bring Fedor to the UFC? Come on. And of course fans are going to want to see Sonnen Jones strictly from the shit-talking. Shit, I want to see Sonnen Jones just because of the shit-talking.
Sense, bro. He's got to have at least one. If he went against a top 5 fucking light heavyweight and dominated and finished them, then I'd go, okay, yeah, Chael Sonnen deserves it. But he's probably going to have 2 fights in the division, man. He hasn't fought there in years.
Griffin is certainly not top 5.
He's not, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If he beats Griffin, from there he needs a top 5. So if he has 2 solid wins in the division, okay, I can definitely see that happening. But it's like just based off of one win off of a guy who's, just dejected and talking about, how he wants to, leave the sport, man, I can't really agree with that, for sure.
Definitely. So, who do you think Jones is matched up against next?
Well, considering that Dana White said that Henderson's going to be fighting Machida, I would have to say he's on an indefinite injury watch because of that nerve damage. So I would have to say he'll fight the winner of Gustafsson Shogun. That's my guess.
I definitely feel that, and I would love to see it. I think Gustafsson definitely will see a title shot in the next year and a half. He's like just a big, giant Dominic Cruz. Enough with UFC 152. I guess before we get into breaking down Saturday's UFC on Fuel 5 and doing the news, how about we do a little bit 10 seconds of sports?
Shall we?
Let's do it. The refs fuck up the NFL again, make a horrible call on a Hail Mary, give the Seahawks a shitty win against the Packers, and will be playoffs are heating up. Go Rays. NHL locked out. The players and the owners can't figure out what's going to happen. Preseason locked out. It's horrible. We usually don't do back-to-back segments, but we just did a whole fucking hour and 20 minutes on UFC 152. We actually didn't even have time to get to my 10 seconds of sports last week, so fuck it. You want to just get into our beatdown of the month before we break down this card?
Dude, you know me. I like segments.
You first, Chris. Ladies first.
My beatdown of the month is Cub Swanson versus Charlos, the Bronx Oliveira.
Charlos!
It was a decent fight. It was only one round, barely any fighting going on, but Cub Swanson just hit Oliveira perfectly. Body as hard as he could, then right to the temple. Oliveira backed up, gave up, and just dropped down and put his arms up. So that's my beatdown of the month. It was one of those things where it's rare to see a guy get hit in the perfect spot, one after another, consecutive perfect shots. And it was brutal, and it was fishy at first, but when you go back and watch it, that was gnar.
my beatdown of the month, maybe it's a little repetitive, but I don't give a shit. It's Jones Belfort. Holy shit. The guy broke his arm, and yeah, in that first minute, he was in definite trouble, but John Jones dominated Vitor, busted his face open at multiple locations, just looked absolutely incredible, took him down. I almost gave him, every round was such an ass whooping, I almost gave it a 10-8, because Belfort, other than that armbar attempt, he showed absolutely no chance of winning the fight. When Jones wanted to take him down, he took him down. When Jones wanted to beat him up, he beat him up. And, if it wasn't for that armbar attempt, it may have been one of Jones's most one-sided matches. But, it's such a testament to his resiliency, able to just run in there, almost get beat, get his arm broken, and just absolutely dominate Vitor Belfort to a fourth-round Americana victory. And that was Chris and my beatdown of the month, the segment we do at the end of every month, talk about our beatdowns. Next week, at the beginning of every month, we have the 3 fights we're pumped for. And if you have no idea what that 10 seconds of sports was, I'm a sports fanatic. Chris doesn't follow any other sport than MMA, so I got to get at least 10 seconds in every single episode to, I'm hearing myself echo a little bit. Not anymore, though. Yeah, so I guess moving on, we have UFC on Fuel TV. It's actually going to be an afternoon fight. It's this Saturday. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So actually, I'm going to miss it live. I'm going to a Northwestern Indiana game that literally starts, I think, an hour before UFC on Fuel. So I'll need to catch that on replay somehow, which Fuel's pretty good about that, even though I don't have it at the moment. So I'll have to find some other completely legal means to watch the fight. But, Saturday, September 29th. Not the most stacked card in UFC history, but still a very decent card. Our buddy Ray is actually going there. It's going to be in Nottingham, England, at 3 p.m. Eastern. I guess that'd make it 8 UK time and 12 p.m. Pacific. So make sure, if you have Fuel, to watch that. And if you don't have Fuel, you guys, don't watch it on an illegal stream, you guys. That's bad, you guys.
Don't. I've never done it. I don't understand why anyone would do it. It's perfectly reasonable to spend, $60 for pay-per-views and find someone who has cable. If you don't have cable yourself, that's perfectly reasonable. Okay?
I would gladly spend $1,000 a year on pay-per-views.
Right, and we've done it. We have actually contributed to Dana White's son's birthday, where they went to the Fantasy Factory and his son got to play with Rob Dyrdek. You and I have personally added to that. That is a good feeling. I like that.
I almost, there was some stupid charity where they gave goats and animals to needy, starving children in Africa, but I gave mine to needy Dana White kids who want to drive go-karts with Rob Dyrdek. But it's going to be a 6-fight.
Hey, on, dude. Just forget about it. We're not going to get him on.
No, never. We've gone past the point of taunting to just being straight douchebags. We only have 35 minutes, and we still want to dip our beaks into the news, so we'll try and make this a quick 15, 20-minute affair of breaking down these cards, only spend a minute or a few minutes on each. We'll do them rapid fire. Lots of European guys. There is an Englishman in every fight except the main event, where you have Stefan Struve, who I believe identifies himself with the net as a Dutchman. Yep. We have Shea Mills versus Dwayne Bang Ludwig. Ludwig's definitely great standing up. You can't hate on him at all. But technically, Mills has shown he has really good footwork. Ludwig, definitely probably better striking. He was in K1. He's a lot more multifaceted, but Mills has more of a reach. So I think Mills eventually will win it standing or on the ground, wherever they decide to bring it.
Yep, Shea Mills is a power puncher from England, and he had a great showing against Chris Cope. knocked his ass out, and then in his next fight had the pleasure of fighting Rory McDonald. Got dominated on the ground. He doesn't have a great ground game, but neither does Dwayne Bang Ludwig. I think Ludwig is at the tail end of his career. He's about 36. He's a very technical striker, but he doesn't really finish anyone in the UFC. He just uses a good game plan, trains out of Greg Jackson. So I've got Mills in this one by a finish.
Definitely. Moving on to the next one, which I totally agree. I think we'll see Shea Mills take it by TKO later on. Ludwig's a guy who's known to throw serious bombs in the first round or two, but lately, you know what? I'm thinking his last fight was a pretty early loss to Hardy. I'm going to change that to a first round TKO by Shea Mills.
Yep, Dwayne Ludwig doesn't throw power shots. He's technical. Everything he throws down the chamber. He mixes in leg kicks, body kicks, high kicks. He has some beautiful technique, but he never really formulated that into MMA as far as his ground game and tactics. So I see Shea Mills just being a younger guy with more power. So I've got Shea Mills first or second round finish.
Definitely. We have John Hathaway and John Maguire next. This is the only fight on the entire card that has two Englishmen going against each other. Both of them have put together some decent records. Maguire's 2-0 since joining the UFC. His last win was a armbar against DeMarcus Johnson. And John Hathaway also coming off a couple impressive wins. His last one to Pascal Kraus. Both of them really active guys. It should be pretty good, but the way I see it, Hathaway may not be as deadly as Maguire standing up, but I actually, Chris is blowing up my Skype. I'm going in a different order as you, buddy. I see Hathaway. You know, he has a 7-inch reach. I think better wrestler, fights with the London shoot fighters, and I see Hathaway taking this one.
Absolutely, Hathaway is a beast. He's giant for the weight class. Very technical. An awesome wrestler out of the UK, which is very rare. And definitely, he actually hit Diego Sanchez with a beautiful counter knee. So you know that he doesn't have like the striking to where he can put himself out there and throw strikes really crazy. But if the moment calls for it, he actually has the tools to react. And then you have John Maguire, who is an absolute phenom in grappling out of the UK. So I've got actually a pretty boring fight with this one. I'm going to say Hathaway by decision. That's a safe bet. Maguire is a finisher, but I don't think he can actually contend with a guy like John Hathaway, because Hathaway is just a beast, and he never gets. I mean, he beat Rick Story. I'll put it that way. So I don't think that John Maguire has that skill set.
No. Moving toward the next fight, which is going to be a lightweight fight. Really interesting fight. You have Paul Sass, who's one of the best fighters on his back, and Matt Wyman, who, being a great wrestler, I think he fought NCAA. I'm not sure, but either way, an amazing wrestler. One of the best fighters on top. You know, I'm kind of a power top like Wyman, Chris a power bottom like Sass, but Sass can submit dudes off of his back. He's one of maybe the handful of guys. If you're on top of him, you're not necessarily winning the fight. And you know, you look at Sass's record. He might be one of the best lightweight fighters in the UFC. 13-0. Since joining the UFC, 3-0, all by submission, all in the first round. His last fight against Jacob Volkman, incredible triangle armbar at UFC 146. You know, as much as I like giving wrestlers the edge against jiu-jitsu guys, I think Sass will win this one, because Wyman's real advantage is taking people down, putting them on their back. I don't know if Wyman's necessarily ever fought a guy who is as slick on his back as Paul Sass, even in a guy like Cole Miller. Cole's really good at jiu-jitsu, but he isn't throwing up triangles like Sass.
Paul Sass is a prodigy. His MO is the Sass angle. It's a Paul Sass triangle where he transitions from one move to the other. He'll fake an armbar and then go into a triangle. It's beautiful. He's a prodigy. Matt Wyman, as you said, is a great wrestler, but he's actually a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. He can fight anywhere, and his actually one true weapon is his heart and what I would describe as grit. He just has that grit where no matter how hard you hurt him, he's going to keep on trucking forward. So my gut says Paul Sass by submission in the first or second round, but I actually think that Matt Wyman is going to drag Paul Sass into deep waters and get that unanimous decision nod.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends as, how much has Wyman really gotten to technically be able to defend submissions. He's actually never been tapped out, so we know he's definitely pretty good at jiu-jitsu defense. But Guy lost to Sam Stout a handful of fights ago. So as good as Wyman is, and maybe it's biased because Sass is one of my favorite fighters because he's so dangerous on his back. But I've Sass winning this one. I really think Sass could be a top 10 lightweight.
That's definitely not out of the range of possibilities as long as he gets matched up favorably and does really well with those matchups. I could see that happening. And Matt Wyman definitely has his hands full with Paul Sass.
Yeah, Sass is a big dude at lightweight. He's 6'1". But at a bantamweight, the smallest fight of the 6-fight main card, we got Brad One Punch Pickett versus Yves Jabois. And I'll let you break that one down for us, if you please.
Sure. Brad Pickett is a Englishman with some very technical boxing who trains out of... Whoa, what's going on? Avalanche? What's going on over there? So Brad Pickett trains out of ATT with Mike Brown, Thiago Alves, a bunch of guys over there. There's been a exodus of people leaving ATT. A lot of guys have left.
I'm not sure if we still have Chris. I can't hear him. I guess I'll bring...
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
And we're back. Sorry about that. Beautiful Chicago Comcast cut my internet off. Actually, my modem will reset every 4 or 5 hours, and luckily I was able to connect to a neighbor's internet connection. So we are back. Sorry about that once again. But, Sass versus Wyman is going to be a excellent match. Let me type here. I'm too inept to to type and talk. I'm that brilliant. But moving on, we have Brad Pickett and Egypt 1, which I'll actually go ahead and start breaking that down, as it appears that our buddy Chris dropped out of the call. Pickett's definitely the favorite in this one. Pickett, the Englishman, versus Yves Dubois, who actually hails from Haiti. Dubois and Pickett are both coming off pretty good win streaks. Even though Pickett did lose a couple fights ago, that was the current champion, Renan Barão. Beat guys like Damasio Page and Ian Menjivar. Actually beat Damasio Page by a second-round submission at the last UFC on Fuel TV, Gustafsson versus Silva, and Yves Dubois on a 3-fight win streak. Two actually by split decision, a little bit contested, against Ian Loveland and Willel Watson and Jeff Hoagland. This is definitely going to be a fight that goes at a frenetic pace. Pickett loves jumping around in the pocket. Yves Dubois loves jumping around in the pocket. Both of them love to stand and bang, and Tiger Dubois has a lot more rounded striking game than Pickett. Pickett, his nickname is One Punch. Really, one of the best boxers at bantamweight. And Dubois has some flashy kicks, some flying knees, and that'll definitely prove pretty dangerous for the Brit. And we got Chris back. Once again, sorry about that. And as much as we like to bash companies who try and stop this freedom podcast, they want to get in the way of our goddamn liberties. Chicago Comcast trying to fuck me over, so now I'm using my neighbor's internet.
Yeah, man, spaghetti nipples all the way.
Spaghetti nipples all the way. What do you see going down Pickett versus Dubois?
Yeah, okay. Pickett basically has very technical boxing, and he actually has a underrated ground game. He completely dominated Demetrius Johnson, and he tapped out Damasio Page, as you brought up earlier. And whereas Yves Dubois is this very creative striker. So I see this being, if Brad Pickett's team actually wanted to make a good game plan, it would be to strike and then clinch and take him down. I see Brad Pickett winning in this fight by a finish somewhere north of the second round. So probably late second round, early third round finish by submission for Mr. Brad Pickett.
Yeah, I also see Pickett finish. If Dubois is going to finish this fight, I don't see him winning a decision, especially if it's standing up. I think Pickett has better footwork. He's going to need to knock out Pickett. Pickett hasn't been knocked out since 2005. He's got an iron chin, and I see Pickett winning that one by either decision or knockout. You know who I do think is going to get knocked out, Chris?
I think it's going to be Dan Hardy or Amir Sadallah.
Amir Sadallah. I think he's going to get knocked out. What do you think about that?
Well, Dan Hardy is one of these characters, man, where, I have a good friend who it's his favorite fighter, and simply based off of the fact that he's trash-talking and he knocks people out, and he's got a red mohawk. My buddy Danny, shout out to you, Danny. Daniel Barr from yeah. Hell yeah, from Lancaster.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, woo. But Dan Hardy is one of those guys that always comes to stand and bang and has had a horrible ground game. He got dominated by such people as George St. Pierre, Chris Lytle, and Anthony Johnson. And he got knocked out cold by Carlos Condit, which is something you don't really see from Condit. Condit is a volume fighter. Usually he taps people out, and if he does finish someone by strikes, it's usually by TKO, and Condit finished Hardy with one punch. Left hook to the dome, and then followed it up with like one or two more shots. So Dan Hardy definitely is on a 1-4 streak, and Amir Sadallah is a much more well-rounded mixed martial artist. So I'm going to have to say Amir Sadallah, I'm going to say split decision. I say the first round, Dan Hardy rocks Amir. He's dominant. Second round, Amir takes over. Third round will be all Amir. So I've got Amir by a split decision.
I mean, really, Amir's only only really impressive victory was his second-round submission against DeMarcus Johnson back in March 2011. I think Hardy, doesn't have as impressive of a record recently, but he has a number of impressive wins. He has, that win against Marcus Davis, the win against Swick, the recent win against Dwayne Ludwig. Those four guys he lost to, three of them have the possibilities of being a legend at welterweight. You have Condit and St. Pierre, who are the two current champions. Can't really hold either one of those against him. You have Anthony Johnson, who is so much bigger physically, and it went to a decision. Maybe Hardy just wasn't able to find that strength against the much bigger Johnson. And Lytle, who's he's already a legend at the UFC welterweight division, and that decision could have gone either way until Lytle submitted him in the final round, I think with less than a minute to go.
Did you actually watch the Hardy Johnson fight? Did you watch that?
I'm pretty sure I did, but it doesn't come to mind, so maybe I didn't.
2 minutes into the fight, Anthony Johnson lands a clean head kick where Hardy's hands were just outside of the range of blocking, and Johnson kicked him in the head, and Hardy fell down to the side, and then cut to Johnson attempting submissions. Johnson actually went for a crucifix armbar. He had Hardy in a crucifix and then tried to fuck on him. So that fight right there couldn't have gone either way. That was a domination, and that was based off of holes in Hardy's game. And you're right about the Lytle fight for sure. I definitely think that Dan Hardy did well in that fight. He dropped some weight. He said that he tried to drop some muscle mass so he could actually punch, quicker, be more agile. He looked great in that fight. But the reason why I pick Amir Sadallah is just based off of a more well-rounded skill set. Yeah, Dan Hardy has fought harder competition. I'm not going to argue that at all. But Amir Sadallah is a much better mixed martial artist. I mean, I think that he fights smarter, and that's going to come into play when they fight this Saturday night.
Definitely, and Hardy's biggest weakness that he's been criticized for is his wrestling defense, his takedown defense. Amir Sadallah, black belt at Sambo, trains at Extreme Couture. He's got some decent wrestling, so if Sadallah is able to turn it into a wrestling match, he'll obviously win. But I actually see Hardy being able to sneak in there. Sadallah, I think got an early TKO against Johnny Hendricks. It was less than 30 seconds or something.
Bullshit fight, man. I watched that. That was UFC 101. What happened was Hendricks hit Amir Sadallah so hard that he flew across the cage, and he caught himself against the cage, then turned over, and the ref stepped in right after that, dude. I remember that, man. That was a horrible call. That was bad. So don't take that into account, man. Johnny Hendricks deserves, credit for the win, but that was some bullshit.
Hey, if Hendricks can end him with a big punch, I don't see why Hardy can either. Hardy's obviously dedicated himself much more since the Lytle-Ludwig fights, and I see him finishing this one, finishing in the first round. Why not? Sure. The main event, we got Stefan Struve, the skyscraper. I think he's 6'11 and a half, 7 feet, something crazy like that. Stipe Miocic, he's a Croatian-American, but identifies as an American, as all Americans should, America. Obviously, a much smaller guy. He's 6'4", even though he has a pretty decent reach. I think even though he's 8 inches shorter, he only has a 4-inch reach disadvantage. But Stefan Struve, really, really turned it on lately. He just had an armbar against LeVar Johnson. Obviously, before that, had a TKO and a submission against Dave Herman and Pat Barry. But I don't know, something about Stipe Miocic. I think he has a very successful career at a heavyweight. Guy is not only full of power. I mean, he TKO'd and KO'd Phil DeFries and Shane Del Rosario, but he's very technical as well.
Yeah, this matchup I get because they actually fought in the same card. It was Miocic versus Del Rosario, as you said, and he dominated. And then, you have Stefan Struve, who armbarred LeVar Johnson. As far as this fight goes, the matchup, I'm sorry, I just don't care about it. As a main event, it's just ridiculous, dude. Like, they're trying to find heavyweight contenders. I understand that. But I just don't really care for it, simply due to the fact that Miocic isn't a big name, and Stefan Struve always crumbles against top contendership. He lost against Dos Santos. He lost against Roy Nelson. He lost against Travis Brown. For a guy that has that many losses, by knockout, it's just ridiculous to think that he could come into this fight and build off of Miocic. Miocic is no joke. So as far as this fight goes, I think it's a pick and fight, man. I have no idea. I think Stefan Struve is really good when he's on and horrible when he's off. And Miocic is he's undefeated. He's looked great. So I'm going to go ahead and say Stipe Miocic by a finish of some sort.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly. Even though the first 15 seconds there, you sounded like a robot. I don't know if that was just for me or if that'll come through for all of the listeners, but it was pretty funny listening to you talk there, at least on my behalf.
Yeah.
But we also were supposed to have a Strikeforce card. We're supposed to have Pat Healy versus Gilbert Melendez. That unfortunately was canceled due to an injury to Gilbert Melendez. So we don't have any fights on that to bring you. So news. The news. Let's start off with a pretty lighthearted thing. Doesn't really relate straight into fighting, but Always Sunny in Philadelphia, going into their 8th season, they recently released a revamped version. Obviously, it was a joke. A lot of people were taking it seriously, and I hope those people never make offspring. They were, being really angry on comments. But, all brand new cast in Always Sunny. Candace Cameron, Exhibit, Haley Joel Osment, Andrew Dice Clay, and none other than Chael P. Sonnen playing Dennis. What did you think of that?
That rocked my world, man. When I saw that, I literally haven't been on the internet, at all today until I got home, right before the podcast, and I saw some link on the MMA Podcast.com, Chael Sonnen on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I was like, holy shit, no fucking way, man. So I logged in and I watched it. Dude, incredible, man. Incredible. He just took his shirt off. He's like, yeah. Hell yeah, dude. I was like, okay.
Hell yeah.
It's perfect, man. That's Dennis. He always takes his shirt off. That was really funny.
It was a great...
The thing that I took away from it the most was that Haley Joel Osment got fat, dude. He got fat.
Yeah, he looked a lot like Fat Mac. He actually... He I'm not a big Haley Joel Osment fan, but he actually did an amazing Mac impression, busting in with karate and saying, hey, hey, bitches. Or I forget what exactly he said. You had Andrew Dice Clay shooting his gun off as Frank. You had Exhibit randomly doing the inflatable man dance as D. It was a pretty fucking funny promo. I definitely want to see Sonnen do some more Hollywood. Let's breeze through the news. We only have 10, 11 minutes left. Kenny Florian recuperating from his back injury, but he said he's leaving the door open for a comeback. Do you want to see Kim Flo back?
I absolutely do. I thought him quitting after that Aldo fight was ridiculous. He went 5 rounds with Aldo, man. I mean, that's saying a lot. So if you can go 5 rounds with Aldo, Chad Mendez, an undefeated fighter, got knocked out in the first round. Kenny Florian went 5, rounds with him. So I would love to see him come back, and I think that he should go back to lightweight because his only losses are to title holders or title contenders. He lost to Sean Shirk, BJ Penn, and Gray Maynard, and that's it.
He's only lost in title matches or definite title contendership matches. So I think whether he wants to come back to lightweight or featherweight, I definitely want to see him come back. The bantam or the featherweight division is thickened up quite a bit since he's left, and I'd like to see him take on some of these guys. Let's see, going down there, you had the UFC 153 trailer released, pretty good. UFC 154 poster released. You can check both of them out on the website. We'll move on. We'll talk about Bisping, saying he's cool with a possible Weidman match, which I mentioned after the Bisping-Stan match. He'll probably face the winner of Weidman-Boach next. That'll be at UFC 155. But Chris Weidman was pondering why Stephan Bonnar got Anderson Silva, and he didn't get Anderson Silva. He's a huge 3-1 favorite over Boach. Do you think Weidman deserved a title shot over Silva, just moving to wherever weight class he wants to?
I think that Chris Weidman saying that he deserves that, absolutely not. I mean, he beat one top 10 guy in Mark Munoz, and Mark Munoz, we've argued about this before in the podcast, he didn't even deserve that spot in the first place. Munoz lost to Okami and then beat three nobodies. I can't remember. It was CB Dalloway, Damian Maia, and Jorge Santiago.
Yep.
Dude, that's barely enough to get you by. You should not be calling out for a title shot. And then Weidman comes up, and he's dominated everyone. I mean, except for his fight with Damian Maia, where he came in, he was a last-minute replacement. That's understandable, but he really hasn't beat anyone of note except for Mark Munoz. And Munoz just didn't look like himself in there. I have to say that Weidman probably doesn't deserve it, and I think Bisping does after beating Brian Stan.
Yeah, and kind of going toward your point, you said Mark Munoz didn't really have any impressive wins. Well, by that same figure, all right, well, other than Mark Munoz, Weidman has no impressive wins either. The two really decent caliber opponents he's faced, Damian Maia, Mark Munoz, and if Munoz really is a can crusher, then he has no impressive wins because in that case, Munoz is a can crusher, and his win against Damian Maia was not impressive whatsoever. I think he actually might lose to Tim Boach, even though he's a big favorite.
I think so too.
Yeah, the winner of that fight will probably face Michael Bisping next, and the winner of that will probably get a title shot, unless Joe Silva was listening to my awesome 8-man tournament idea. Sticking with the the middleweights. Friend of the show, Chris Lieben, is going to return to UFC 155. I can't wait to see him back. And they're feeding him someone he's probably going to beat in Carlos Vimola. He's returning from his 1-year suspension following his UFC 138 loss against Mark Munoz.
Yeah, Chris Lieben's coming back. He's facing Carlos Vimola, who just lost to Francis Carmont. Vimola had a successful middleweight debut. He has fought at heavyweight, light heavyweight, dropped down. He beat Mike Macenzio by second round, rear naked choke. Carlos Vimola is no joke, man. Like he's not a great mixed martial artist. He's a berserker. He runs at you, he fakes a punch, and then he takes you down, tries to submit you, and uses strength. So I think Chris Lieben has his hands full in this fight. I think Lieben will win because he's so seasoned and well-rounded. So I've got Chris Lieben beating Carlos Vimola, definitely. And before we move on after that, I just want to make one quick point. Friend of the show, John Albert, has a fight lined up against Scott Jorgensen. And as far as
that's going to be good.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, man. Go John Albert, man. I'm Team Albert. You definitely have a chance to skyrocket up into the upper echelon. So, John, good luck. Good luck, sir.
John was actually not only the first fighter we ever had on, he was the first guest we ever had on the show. Listener, fighter, announcer, whatever. So, definitely a huge fan of him here on the show. Talking about fight announcements, unfortunately, we had an injury that has caused the fight to either be postponed or canceled. We're not really sure. But Frank Mir, one of the most devastating heavyweights in the world, actually moved over, which the Fertitta said was going to be a one-time thing, moved from the UFC to Strikeforce to fight Strikeforce champion Daniel Cormier. And unfortunately, Mir's injured. That fight's not going to happen. I'm assuming that it gets postponed because, as the Fertitta said, it's going to be a one-time thing for them to move a UFC guy to Strikeforce. And there's no one really in Strikeforce good enough to fight Daniel Cormier right now.
Certainly is not. As far as depth goes, Strikeforce is definitely in the lacking department. They don't have the guys to actually challenge their champions. Cormier beat Josh Barnett in a very exciting fight recently. I think that was earlier this year. That was great. And so who do you get to fight Cormier? I mean, most of the guys, Alistair Overeem, Bigfoot, all those guys are in the UFC now. So it's just going to be really tough to find a challenger for him.
Definitely. And we also have a pretty interesting note that I wanted to address. Vitor Belfort almost just beat John Jones, obviously. We talked about that ad nauseum. He made a really interesting comparison. He had compared MMA to Formula One racing, and the comparison he was making is back in the day, the winner of Formula One was the best driver. But today, it's not about the driver. It's about the engineer. It's about, who's tuning up the car, what team you're on. Are you driving a Ferrari? Are you driving a Mercedes? What sort of car are you driving? And I think he was making the allusion to MMA as far as science goes, with testosterone replacement therapy, human growth hormone in a lot of cases, just straight out steroids in a lot of cases. I thought it was a very apt and almost so apt I'd never thought of it in that sense before. I was like, whoa, it could be like that, where you literally don't have the more skilled fighter winning. You have the guy who's, taking the better stuff winning. What do you think about that comparison?
Man, I love it. That, like you said, that was really something that makes you think, which with Vitor, he's normally like, he's actually normally talking about God and thank you, Jesus, for my win and all the fans, like stuff like that. So for someone like that to bring up this parallel where you're thinking about, like, fuck, he's right, man. Like, you're just a machine, and, like, obviously the people who tune the machine up, what are they using? That's incredible, man. I loved it.
Definitely. Going over a few more notes, Joe Rogan gets his second jiu-jitsu black belt. Now he has a black belt in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Jean-Jacques Machado, and I believe he's a black belt in Taekwondo. So big ups to Rogan, UFC announcer, and it's nice knowing that the guys announcing the fights really are that educated on the sport.
Powerful Joe Rogan.
Powerful Joe Rogan. A couple UFC president notes. Dana White saying, like I mentioned before, Lyoto Machida is probably going to get Dan Henderson next. I'll quote him, Machida should have taken the fight against Jones, he was talking about. Now you're fighting fucking Dan Henderson. Now you might not be able to fucking get the title again, in classic Dana White style. And he said that he's still planning for an Edgar Aldo fight. Aldo is not going to be out for too long. Coming up, we have Bellator 74. We have the welterweight tournament quarterfinals this Friday. It's the debut of season 7, and we have Jim Wallhead taking on Lyman Gooden, so that should be pretty interesting. Friday night, Bellator 74, and Saturday afternoon, UFC on Fuel 5. Definitely next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. That's 6 p.m. Pacific, and the next few episodes are going to be powerful. We're going to have on Michael Schiavello. We're going to have on Renzo Gracie. We're going to have on Joey motherfucking Coco Diaz. That's right. Woo! Next week or two, and he should be a motherfucking blast to talk to. Really looking forward to Diaz, Schiavello, and Renzo, one of the pioneers of Chris, what you learned today?
What's up?
What you learned today?
Say that even through our troubles and strife, we can soldier on and make a great podcast for y'all.
I learned something much more important. You're the power bottom to my power top. Awesome. So definitely check us out Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Check out the MMA Roundtable. Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, the MMApodcast.com, the MMA Podcast on Twitter, and we gone.
We gone.
Back there.